Alright, so as you guys may or may not be aware, Monster Hunter Rise is going to be coming out for PC at some point next week, depending on when I'm actually able to upload this video. It should be next week. Yeah, with the upcoming release of Monster Hunter Rise, I'd figure that I would tell you guys my thoughts on the weapons in Monster Hunter Rise, because I know that a lot of people essentially tried avoiding watching as much as possible because they wanted to get it on PC when it eventually comes out. Luckily, that's not going to be a thing for any Monster Hunter project moving forward. At least it shouldn't be, because there's not going to be delays anymore between console versions, PC versions. It should, every step of the way, just be day and date from now on. But I figured I would talk about the weapons and hopefully help people choose their weapon, or at least be aware of some of the changes that you will be experiencing from World to Rise, or maybe from whatever other Monster Hunter you've played to Rise, or maybe even if you're a complete newcomer, you'll get an idea on how some of these weapons actually play. Now, obviously, for some people, the weapons that you choose are going to be directly related to power. And I've thought of that, because I was like, okay, I know that a lot of people are going to want to min-max to the nth degree, and you're going to want to know, what is the most powerful weapon in Monster Hunter Rise? Now, be aware that this is true in the current version of Monster Hunter Switch. There might be a couple of changes in the PC version that we're not aware of yet. I doubt it. I highly, highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure that what you see here is what you're going to get on PC. And for that, to find out what is, in fact, the objectively most powerful weapon in the game, we actually can resort to data that has been provided by speedrunners. I mean, powerful is something that you have to determine what is power to you, but in the most accepted form of power in the community is like, how fast can you kill hard things, right? And you have here the times for Apex and Elders, Hunter Rank 7, the entirety of Hunter Rank 7, Hunter Rank 5, and 7. And this is all automatically updated as people upload more things into the spreadsheet, because, like, if you go through the spreadsheet, you can see that... wait, where's the thing? It's in here. If you go through the spreadsheet, you can actually go and you can see, like, the speed runs that people are doing and whatnot, and calculations and whatever. Basically, like, all of the world records and speed runs, people are constantly uploading stuff into the spreadsheet, which gets automatically updated. And they've been doing this for a good long while now. I think ever since 3.0 came out or whatever. And they've essentially determined what are the strongest weapons from a speed running thing, because obviously each of these weapons has things that they excel at. And I'm going to be talking about each of the weapons individually if you're interested in that. But if all you really want is like, okay, Rakan, just give it to me. Give it to me straight. Which one's the best weapon in the game? It's the bow. The bow is the best weapon in Monster Hunter Rise. You can get the fastest times with the bow. It is closely followed by the heavy bowgun. Then you have the light bowgun, and these are like your three top weapons. They're also the ranged weapons, and to be honest, the only thing that is slightly different in Rise from, I feel like, almost every other monster in a game is that usually the bowguns are on top. They're always on top, as far as I can remember, for every monster in a game. The bowguns are always on top. They're always the most powerful weapons. This time, the bow is on top of the bowguns. That's kind of like, at least for me, it's a little bit of the first. But, you know, and yes, they also give you statistics on usage, as Regal Eagle is pointing out. Look at the usage on Longsword. Yeah, exactly, 40%. 40%. It's a lot. That's a lot of people playing Longsword, I know. But anyway, so I'd like to think I contribute to this 6.9%. I'd like to think that, you know, if I didn't make my videos, this statistic would go down by like 2 or 3%. That's what I'd like to think, right? Both me and Chaos Slayer in here, just like spreading the good word, the Gunlance, me and Chaos Slayer are the reason this statistic is as high as it is, okay? If it wasn't for us, this statistic would be like 2%, maybe 1.5%, something like that. But anyway, continuing onward. So, the most powerful weapon's the bow, followed by heavy bowgun, light bowgun. Then you have the longsword, which is the best of the melee weapons. It's like, I think a lot of people think that when I tell them that the longsword's really powerful, they think I'm memeing. It's like, no, it's actually the most powerful melee weapon in the game, and it's like it's not even close. Then there's the greatsword, which actually was surprising. I didn't expect to see the greatsword this high because I haven't really been following this tier list because I don't really care that much about tier lists or weapon power. I care about how much fun a weapon is, and, you know, if a weapon's really fun, I start caring a little bit about its power because, I mean, when you look at the longsword average time of like 2 minutes, and then you look at the Gunlance, which is almost twice that, you're like, okay, this is not fair, but okay, fine. But anyway, so you got the longsword, the greatsword, the switch axe coming in closely behind. Again, I'm surprised switch axe is this high. I expect dual blades to be a little bit higher on this list. I actually expect the dual blades to come off below the longsword, but no. So switch axe, dual blades, sword and shield at number 8. I remember that when they started doing this, sword and shield was considerably lower. Then we have charge blade. We have the hell is LA again? Lance. I was like, LA? Los Angeles? Coming in at number 10, we have Los Angeles. No, Lance. Coming in at number 10 is Lance. I actually don't like Lance at all. It's my least favorite weapon. We'll talk more about that. Have Insect Glaive on 11, Hunting Horn on 12, Hammer on 13. I'm surprised Hammer's this low. But, you know, I gotta tell you, it seems to me like some of the most fun weapons are at the bottom. Hammer and Gunlance, these are two really, really, really fun weapons. Even though Hammer is not like my favorite. After the Gunlance, my favorite sword and shield, but still. Hammer number 13, Gunlance at the very bottom. Gunlance effectively being the worst weapon of Monster Hunter Rise in terms of performance. But that is what I like to call the fun text, because this is the most fun weapon to play in Monster Hunter Rise. So it's just that simple. Now, continuing onwards, for those of you that wanted to know from a power standpoint where everything stands, I'll put this link in the description of this video, whatever. And for you guys on stream, if you want to watch this, this is a public document. Everybody can go and access it. So if you guys want to get more details as to how this works, feel free to do so. They even tell you here how they tested it and where they tested it and all of that stuff. And there's a bunch of data that you can go through, but it all boils down to this. And this is the power section of this particular video. But moving on, I'd like to actually give you guys, you know, a couple of things about how the weapon changes from what you know in previous games. And we're going to be going through in the order that they have them in the official website. They also have their Silkbind skills here. I'm going to be trying to keep this video playing on repeat so that you guys have something to watch as we go through. But, you know, we got the Silkbind text here, power attack, power sheath, hunting edge, and adamant charge slash. But that's not all. So, like, the greatsword, I took a couple of notes here because I have played all of the melee weapons. The part where I'm going to struggle a little bit to provide you guys with context is going to be when we get to ranged weapons like the bows, bowguns, and all that stuff, because I don't play those. But when it comes to the greatsword, so one of the first things that I think is essential to this weapon is definitely the power sheath. Power sheath is fucking amazing. Power sheath essentially gives you a lot of mobility while at the same time buffing your attack damage, because basically instead of sheathing your weapon normally, most of the time you're going to be using power sheath because your character is going to move and it's going to sheath and it's going to buff the next attack that you do, which is really, 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 really cool. Then you also have Rage Slash, which they don't list here. It's not really a Silkbind attack. It's a switch skill that you do, but it's one of the things that I consider really important for Greatsword, which is in World you had True Charge Slash, which is a thing where you charge up and at the third charge you go ahead and do the really big damage, right? In this game, you have Rage Slash, and what Rage Slash does is it's actually a very versatile finisher, as opposed to doing what you're watching the video right there, True Charge Slash. You just charge up this final slash, and for starters, you can rotate it 360, whereas you can kind of adjust the direction of True Charge Slash a little bit. Rage Slash, you can adjust it 360. So any direction that you want. And on top of it, if a monster hits you while you are charging Rage Slash, 1, it doesn't interrupt you. 2, it actually boosts the damage of the attack itself. Now, it's not as powerful as True Charge Slash, but it is way more versatile, as you can imagine. Rurkon, do you know if the Switch event quest will also be available for PC from the start? Yes. I don't think it's all of them, but it is most of them. So they might not have the ones that we received like in the last 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. But beyond that, you have everything on PC from the get-go. So yeah, Rage Slash is amazing. They also have a gap closer, which is this adamant charge slash thing, which actually closes a gap into the monster and at the same time instantly starts charging up your weapon. And I think it goes into the second charge or something like that. So that is really cool as well. So you can kind of like do adamant charge slash. And if I remember correctly, you can instantly go for the tackle and then you can go for the third charge slash, which would be either true charge or rage slash, depending on the switch skill that you have. And then they also have the hunting edge, which personally I don't like it. I've heard some people like go to bat for this skill. They're like, no, Rurikhan, you don't understand. It's a fantastic skill. And I'm just like, okay, sure, whatever. I think that the only reason to do hunting edge is to flex on monsters. But hunting edge is basically the leaping attack that you actually see in this video at the very beginning. I think they do it right after this. Come on, show it to me. Show me the hunting edge. Or they do it right at the start. But it's basically like a really spectacle attack where your character just kind of like just jumps upward. Let me see if we actually get it here on video. Come on. Come on, do it. Just do it. Yeah, here it is. It's this thing, the hunting edge. Where basically you hit with the attack and then you can charge an attack on the way down. But I'll tell you right now, it is very hard to land that thing. It is extremely hard. Also remember, I have guides for these weapons in the channel for anybody that wants to like get up to date before the game actually comes out. So there will be links to the playlist of all of my weapon guides. The only weapons that I don't have guides to is the ranged weapons because I don't play them and I don't want to make a fool of myself by talking out of my ass about them. So next up, let's talk about Longsword. Longsword. So Longsword is hands down the best melee weapon like we talked about in terms of power, but even if it wasn't like justified by the power, I would still tell you that it's the best overall melee weapon. Because it's just so incredibly powerful. To the point that I would actually call it overpowered, but I don't want to get into that particular discussion. It's just quite simply the advantage of the longsword is that it has a ton of counterattacks. Very much like you already had in Monster Hunter World. The difference is that the Yai, one of the big differences, the Yai Spirit Slash has no penalty. Whereas in World, it had a penalty, so if you messed it up, it would actually like cost you gauge and stuff like that. In Rise, there's no penalty. So if you mess it up, it doesn't matter. So you can just like Yai Spirit Slash non-stop. That's simple. Now, with all the counters that you have with this weapon, you're going to be able to basically stay on top of your target at all times, pretty much. It's not particularly hard once you get an idea of how the weapon works. There is a choice that you're going to need to make, and that is you're going to have to pick between Soaring Kick and Silkbind Sakura Slash. Rezel Black, thank you very much for becoming grossly incandescent. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. And the difference is, quite simply, Soaring Kick is better. Soaring Kick is 1,000 times better in terms of performance. It is the better skill. Silkbind Sakura Slash, though, is cool and is way easier because every time you perform Silkbind Sakura Slash, it increases your gauge. So you do 3 of these, you're in red. It's that simple. The problem is you don't really have, as far as I'm aware, you don't really have anything to spend your gauge on because Soaring Kick is what gives you Helmbreaker. So you have to pick and choose. Do you want Helmbreaker or do you want Sakura Slash? That is one of the choices that you have to make when it comes to the longsword. But you do get 3 counterattacks. Like I said, you have the Foresight Slash, you have the Yai Spirit Slash, and you have the Serene Pose, which is this one right here, which costs 2 wire bugs, but it's like a super counter that you can do. Right, so those are like the 3 counters that you have. It's very much a counterplay weapon. It's all about you analyzing what the monster's about to do, and then counter that. Or, even if you don't use the counters, it's still an extremely powerful weapon if you just play it as a regular weapon without using counters, because Helmbreaker is redonkulous. The amount of damage that you can do with this ability it's crazy. It's just crazy. If you put like good skills in there, it's insane. Now, an important thing for those of you either coming from World or for previous Monster Hunter games, one thing that you might not be expecting is you need a new upkeep skill in this particular weapon. And that upkeep skill is called Speed Sheath. You're going to need Speed Sheathing because without it, the longsword is not nearly as powerful as it can be. And the reasoning is, you have the sheathing attack that you do to go into Yai Spirit Slash and the regular Yai Slash. And if you don't use Speed Sheathing, it's going to be harder for you to time that to do counters. Whereas if you do Speed Sheathing, it's way easier. It sheathes the weapon super fast, and it's just like really... It's like there's a couple of weapons that we'll be talking about that got new upkeep skills that they didn't have before. Like, I don't think a lot of people were using speed sheathing before, but now in Rise, it really is important. That's one of the first things you want to get as a longsword user, is you want to try and ensure that you get 3 speed sheathing because it just improves the flow of the weapon. Speed sheathing, quick sheathing, you guys know what I'm talking about. Right? So, then we have the Sword and Shield. Okay, and look, Sword and Shield, it's one of my baby girls, okay? It's one of my baby girls, the Sword and Shield. It's really, really good. I really, really like it. I love this weapon. I think this weapon is freaking amazing. It's not perfect. They did a couple of changes to it that... It's a little bit frustrating for me, and I'll get into it. But let's start by talking about like the good aspects. So for starters, you have a really cool moveset. The moveset's cool. You got cool switch skills, like you got Falling Shadow over here, where you just basically yeet yourself towards the monster, and then you can either finish with a Falling Bash, or you can do the Helm Breaker attack that you had on the sword. On the Sword and Shield back in Monster Hunter World, which is also good depending on the monster. Obviously, you want to use that mostly in big monsters that you can hit multiple times with. You also can just like do a regular slash, but obviously don't want to do that. The other switch skills that you have Windmill. Now, Windmill is really cool because this is kind of like I think it was called Round Slash in Generations Ultimate. But basically, while you are doing the Windmill, you have a ton of invincibility frames. So if monsters do want a really big attack on you, you can windmill through it, which is really, really good. And on top of it, you're also going to be dealing a lot of damage because this skill does a considerable amount of damage. And then you have Metsu Shoryugeki, which is, basically once you get Metsu Shoryugeki, you just remove windmill and you just put Metsu Shoryugeki forever because that's just the way that it is. And some people will disagree. I know that some people will disagree. You're wrong because Metsu Shoryugeki is the best. No, it's like a style thing. So you're gonna pick. Do you want to do windmill? Do you want to Metsu? Metsu is really good because it's a counter attack and it's very stylish. And it's basically a dragon punch from Street Fighter with your shield, and it feels incredibly satisfying to pull off. So personally, I heavily recommend Metsu Shoryugeki. It's fantastic, super, super fun, and it's one of the most satisfying moves to pull off in the whole game, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the downside to Sword and Shield, which some people will consider an upside depending on which side of the fence you land. To me, it's a little bit of a downside, is that shield bashing is heavily preferred to actually using Perfect Rush, because Perfect Rush is still present from Monster Hunter World. I know that a lot of people don't really care for Perfect Rush. I personally loved Perfect Rush. I took a long time to master Perfect Rush, but at the end of the day, the norm when it comes to Sword and Shield and Monster Hunter Rise is more about shield bashing, because you can get stuns, it doesn't consume sharpness, and it just has a lot of benefits. And overall, as you know, raw damage is still preferred because for whatever reason, Capcom does not appear to like elemental damage unless you're using like the dual blades or ranged weapons. But yeah, it's like I've attempted a bunch of builds, and yeah, you can do Perfect Rush with elemental damage, but ultimately most people will advise you to just go Shield Bash, because Shield Bash is really strong. It gets the monster knocked out and all of that stuff. Very satisfying, and it scales really well. Not scales, but like it synergizes very well with Metsu Shoryugeki, which also does KO damage. So there's that. Not forget the guard point. Yeah, it's a counter. Metsu Shoryugeki is a counter. Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned that because, again, some people will not know. But yeah, this works very much like a counter as well. You can do it solo, but if you manage to land it as a counter, it deals more damage and it's cooler looking. Which is why it's so beautifully satisfying. Gaijin actually calls this weapon the shield and sword when it comes to Monster Hunter Rise. So there's that. There's also a new combo finisher, which they actually show off in this video at some point. It's that one right there, where he just kind of like spins around and slashes. You can use that as a finisher to like your shield bash combo, where you'd go like, you do 3 shield bashes into the monster, and then you can finish with that, which deals a lot of damage if you do it at the end of a combo. It also allows you to reposition, and on top of it, the Sword and Shield now also has built-in aerial mode, which is not the stuff that you're watching in the video, but like there is a switch skill that you can do that basically allows you to instantly go into aerial mode and shield bash a monster in the face, which I've used a lot, and you get to choose between that and your advancing slash. So Sword and Shield, really, really good, really, really fun. I wish that Perfect Rush was more valued because it's harder to pull off than other moves. But for Rise, at least in the current iteration of it, Shield Bash is the preferred way to go. So keep that in mind if you're planning on playing Sword and Shield. Now we're going to get into some weapons that I play less, like the dual blades. I know you guys are like, but you talked about longsword. Yeah, I played longsword more than dual blades. To meme, you know, the power of memes has caused me to play more longsword than dual blades. Fucking sue me. So, the dual blades has a counter, which is Shrouded Vault, which basically you can, you know, the monster's about to do an attack, you do a counter, your character flies through the monster, avoids the attack, and does a bunch of damage. You got Piercing Bind. Piercing Bind is basically an explosive kunai that you put on the monster, and then if you attack that spot of the monster, it increases the damage the explosion is going to do, while also dealing additional damage. It's interesting enough, it almost works like Wormstake Blast in Monster Hunter World, but for dual blades. And considering that dual blades are much more mobile than a Gunlance, you know, it kind of works. Then there's also this Tower Vault thing, which I'm not a big fan. It's like an aerial dodge thing. Some people swear by this. Personally, I think that there are easier ways to get into the air with the dual blades, but if you use this, it's very easy to pull off the Attack on Titan Captain Levi attack, or Beyblade attack, whatever you want to call it, because you can still do it. The attack where you kind of just spin around the back of the mouse. Like, you can do that, and Tower Vault makes that very, very, very easy to do. But, yeah, besides that, there's also like a new demon mode, which every time that you dodge, you also deal damage. I'm not sure if it deals more damage than regular demon mode, but regular demon mode makes you move faster than the alternate demon mode. So it's cool. You can mess around with that and figure out which one you like more. But yeah, and also they have built-in aerial. Very much like the Sword and Shield, there's a switch skill that you can swap, that every time that you press the A button to do like the spinning attack, instead of that your character does the GU aerial attack that would launch you in the air. So you just have built-in aerial mode for dual blades as well. Remember, you have to unlock these switch skills. They don't come unlocked from the get-go. You have to like either craft weapons or do hunts or advance and do specific quests. But yeah, some of these switch skills you will need to unlock. But that's the dual blades in Monster Hunter Rise. I think they're pretty cool if you're into them. And yeah, that's all I really have to say when it comes to dual blades. Then we have the lance. Okay, I don't like the lance. When it comes to weapons in Monster Hunter Rise, it is my least favorite weapon. Except I don't really play the ranged weapons, so I guess I'd probably play lance before I'd play ranged. But besides that, lance is my least favorite weapon. And there's one main reason why lance is my least favorite weapon, and I think it's because of the, what's it called? The sweep attack. They give you a sweep attack that you can weave into your combos that does not feel good. Because, like, to me, the lance was always that weapon that goes poke, 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 block, or poke, 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 dodge. You just do your 3 pokes and you dodge, because to me, the lance is a precision weapon. And them adding the sweep attack to it, I did not like that flow at all. And you guys like, really, Rurikon? You're going to say it's your least favorite weapon because of a sweep attack? No, 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 no. The sweep attack is just like the tippy tip of the iceberg, okay? There are plenty more reasons why I don't like the lance. For instance, Twin Vine. I think this attack is boring. I don't think this attack is interesting at all. This attack is supposed to make you like a tank, so you're supposed to like stab the monster with this. Makes it more likely to attack you. I'ma be real. Never really noticed that. Never really noticed that one bit. Now, the other thing is you can use this as a gap closer. I'ma be real. You can just run with the lance. You can just run. You don't need this as a gap closer. Personally, that's my thoughts on it. It costs 2 wire bugs, which in my opinion is 2 wire bugs too many, and it's just not a particularly useful skill. It can be a fun skill to chase down a monster and all that, but like in a real scenario, I don't think you're going to be using this all that much. Then you got Anchor Rage. Now, Anchor Rage, I love Anchor Rage, which is why Capcom made sure to input something into this skill that is going to make me hate this skill. Let me explain to you why. The way Anchor Rage works is you block an attack. The more powerful the attack, the more powerful the counterattack is going to be. Pretty cool, right? You block it, counter it. It's a fun skill, really cool. Yeah, it's great. The problem is this skill actually is negatively impacted if you build for guard. Because the way they calculate how powerful this skill is, and I've seen this in a video somewhere, this went a while, I don't know if they've changed it since then, but it's like the way they calculate the amount of damage you get to do with the counterattack is based on the amount of knockback the attack would do to you. So if you have guard, the attack would do less knockback, therefore your counterattack is going to deal less damage, and you're like, this is incredibly backwards. Why? I don't know. I guess the point is you want to use this if you play evade lancing and then use it whenever you can't evade. I guess that's the point. I don't like it because the lance that I like to play is guard lance. I'm all about guard lance. I'm not about evade lance. I'm about guard lance. So, you know, you add the sweep on top of the twin vines, on top of the way that they do Anchor Rage, and that's already like a lot of reasons why I don't like the lance, but don't worry, it gets worse. I don't like spiral thrust. The way spiral thrust works, you do a counter. If you land the counter perfectly, your character does like 2 attacks. The way those attacks work, it's weird. Like sometimes I'll be able to get the attacks off in the exact direction that I want. A lot of the times I won't. Then again, I don't play that much lance because I don't like it, but I found it really weird to use spiral thrust. Some people that use it, they swear by it. Personally, I don't like it. And on top of it, I think you have to choose between Anchor Rage and spiral thrust if I remember correctly. So, yeah. And then on top of it, they add another switch skill in there, which is the Insta Block, which is basically the Adept Guard from Generations Ultimate, except it's garbage. Because the window at which you have to block is so incredibly tight that I couldn't even do it in the training room. Like I could do it like once or twice, but I couldn't reliably do Insta Block in the training room. Some people are going to say Rurikon's just bad at lance. Okay, dude. Fair game. But listen, I used to love lance. I cannot stand lance and rise, okay? But yeah, I think Insta-Block is just too much risk for almost no reward because the follow-up attack that you get to do after an Insta-Block is terrible. Doesn't actually do any decent amount of damage or anything. And for the amount of things that you're risking, like failing a block and basically replacing your block animation with Insta-Block, I think you should be getting a lot more benefit than that little cross slash thing that he does that deals almost no damage, but that's just me. So in my opinion, I think Lance is terrible, but it shouldn't stop you from playing it. If you enjoy Lance, you might enjoy it. Just be aware that these are the things that you're going to have. And yeah, I'm sorry that I can't say a lot of good things about Lance. I just don't like it. One of the best ways to play Lance in this game is actually to ignore most of the new things that they put on it and just play it like old school Lance. That's where I found the most fun, personally. So there you go. That's Lance. And now we get to talk about my baby girl. My baby girl. The Gunlance. In Monster Hunter Rise, the Gunlance has the best moveset that I've ever played with a Gunlance. In my opinion, this is the best moveset we've ever had. And the weapon, and it is very satisfying to play. I often say, while it is the weakest weapon in the game, it is also the most fun weapon to play in the game because it's just a straight-up fun weapon. You get Guard Edge, which is a Silkbind attack that basically you can use to parry attacks at a moment's notice. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I use Guard's Edge because you can use Guard's Edge faster than you can recover from attacks by dodging. So a lot of the times, I'll actually survive things that I wasn't supposed to survive because Guard's Edge is able to come off a little bit faster, and that's really cool. So Guard's Edge, fantastic skill, wouldn't trade it for the world, friggin' amazing. Then you got a Silkbind attack called Hail Cutter. This is hot garbage. This is just a bad attack. There's no reason to ever use this attack. The way that this works is every time that you use it, it reduces the cooldown on your Wyvern Fire if you're able to land it. Because if you don't, and by land it, I don't mean on a monster, but like if you're able to actually finish the animation. Because if the monster interrupts your animation, which is a long one for Hail Cutter, if the monster interrupts your animation at any point, game over. No refresh on the Wyvern Fire. But the thing is, your Wyvern Fire, and this was calculated by Chaos Slayer himself, who's like beast when it comes to mathing out all Gunlance things. The actual benefit of Wyvern Fire is a DPS loss in this game unless you're playing long shelling. So for normal shelling and for wide shelling, this skill is pretty much useless. Okay? Did I say long? For normal shelling and wide, it's useless. In long, you can get some benefit because Wyvern Fire is not a DPS loss. It's not a massive DPS gain, but it's at least not a DPS loss, and it's fun to do Wyvern Fire. Also, Wyvern Fire can now block, so whenever you start casting your Wyvern Fire, you're essentially blocking. And if you have enough guard, you can power through a lot of moves that monsters will do, and you can push through and let off your Wyvern Fire. Also, this game is potentially one of the weakest Wyvern Fires I've ever seen. I actually think that the Gunlance got nerfed at some point because I remember seeing bigger numbers on Wyvern Fire. Earlier today, I was actually looking up speed runs of Heavy Bowgun, and I saw a Heavy Bowgun just do like a 700 damage hit with a Wyvern Fire, and I was like, must be nice. We come nowhere close to that. Like, not even in your wildest dreams, you're going to hit a 700 damage. Not even if the monster is sleeping, you're going to hit a 700 damage Wyvern Fire. Sorry. It is what it is. Yeah, not even if it's sleeping. You're still not going to reach 7. And you're talking about the hit that I saw of 700. The monster was awake. So, yeah. Wyvern Fire, not great unless you're playing long shelling. Then on top of it, it's like, for those of you that played World, long shelling used to be charge shells. That was only in World, because in previous Monster Hunter entries, wide shelling was actually the one that would do the charge shells, which is very much the case here. But you don't have to worry about it, because charge shells suck too. Charge shells is also a DPS loss. You probably shouldn't do them, so you don't really have to worry too much about that either. Not to mention, there's a much better skill to use that you can swap out for charge shelling, which is called Blast Dash, which is really, 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 really fun. They didn't actually show Blast Dash in this video, but those of you who've played Generations Ultimate, you'll know what Blast Dash is. And yeah, Blast Dash is really cool. There's also aerial shelling, as you can see in the video there. Aerial shelling, not particularly amazing, but fun. I use aerial shelling. I use Hail Cutter and aerial shelling in a meme build because I really like playing that. But again, not the most performance. Considering that this is already the weakest weapon in the game, if you're going to be playing it non-optimally like I do, then you're really going to struggle in terms of performance with this weapon. So just keep that in mind. Besides that, what else is new? Oh yeah, the worm stake for wide shelling does KO damage, as opposed to like regular damage. You know, usually you stab the worm stake, goes like. In wide shelling, instead, you stab it. The stab itself is KO damage, and then the subsequent explosion from the worm stake, it's only one explosion, and that explosion will deal KO damage, which is pretty cool because you can KO monsters with gun lances. So there's that. Then you have Ground Splitter, which is this skill, which is pretty much the meta skill when it comes to Silk Mind attacks. Like in a real scenario where someone's trying to hunt a monster and get it down as fast as possible, literally nobody uses this. Because, like I said, it's just a meme skill. Everybody uses this. Now, this is a cool skill. The problem is that Ground Splitter basically needs to be maintained. So this gives you a buff for a certain amount of time that increases your shelling damage for that certain amount of time. Problem is, for some strange reason, unlike all of the weapons that have buffs like this, like, say, Switch Axe, which you got, like, your gauge going off, Longsword, which has your gauge, and, like, any other weapon that you can think of that has a buff of this kind, like, look, for instance, at Greatsword, Power Sheathing, right? Like, Bow with the, what's it called? Is it a Herculean Draw? I don't know. It's one of the Bow's things that also buffs damage in Bow. All of those, you can sheathe your weapon, but not Ground Splitter. Now, Ground Splitter, baby, the moment you sheath your weapon, buff is gone, which makes it very, very, very hard to maintain due to the fact that, let's face it, besides Blast Dash, the Gunlance has almost no mobility. You already have to play the weapon with Evade Extender 3, and on top of it, you know, you have to keep this buff up. So you need Evade Extender 3, keep this buff up. In certain builds, you also need to do Protective Polish. So it's almost like you're writing a master's degree before you actually start engaging with a monster. Like, okay, I got to sharpen my weapon, get that Protective Polish buff up. I got to make sure that my, my stamina and all the other stuff is going all right. Now, on top of it, I got to do Ground Splitter. Okay, now I'm ready to attack the monster. And then it's like, monster flies away, and you're like, sheath your weapon. Okay, now I go to the next zone and start all over again. That's pretty much how that works with the Gunlance. Having said that, I wouldn't trade it for the world. The moveset is extremely fun. The weapon itself is extremely fun. For those of you that never played Gunlance, the shells, they don't bounce. In this game, it's not necessarily true damage like it was in previous games, because there is some kind of like hit zone calculation going on with shelling as far as I'm aware, so it's not as simple as it used to be, but it's still, like I said, one of the most fun weapons in the game. Just be aware that it's also the weakest one, and if you're someone that cares about performance, you probably shouldn't play this weapon. And going off of that straight into the hammer, extremely fun weapon, love this weapon. As a matter of fact, I even consider maining this weapon because I liked the showcase so much. Impact Crater. Now, it turns out that Impact Crater is apparently so powerful by what most people in the community tell me, because I don't actively play hammer. I just played it for the moveset guide that I did. But Impact Crater is so powerful that it's just like your most powerful move, and you should do it at any time that you possibly can. Which in a way is cool, because Impact Crater is a really cool attack. In another way, it's kind of sad, because there's also Big Bang attack, Big Bang combo, and all the other combos that you have with the hammer that feel a little bit weaker, right? But anyways, Impact Crater, friggin' awesome. Highly recommend. Super fun. Cannot recommend it enough. Now, one of the new things in Hammer that I actually forgot to mention in my guide, and it was pointed out in the comment section, I believe I highlighted that particular comment, is the fact that you can follow up a max charge spinning bludgeon with a Big Bang combo. So, when you do this attack they're doing right here with the spinning bludgeon, and then you hit the monster in the face with the golf swing, you can follow that up straight into Big Bang like they're doing right here, which is really, really cool, really, really powerful. But naturally, friggin' Impact Crater is still going to beat that. Now, you do have two attacks that you can pick from, which is Silkbind, Spinning Bludgeon, and Dash Breaker, because Impact Crater is always present. Dash Breaker is like a forward move with hyper armor and all of that. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Dash Breaker, but I can see the uses that it has, particularly if you're fighting monsters where landing the Silkbind Spinning Bludgeon is going to be a little bit more challenging. Spinning Bludgeon is just like the Spinning Bludgeon you have in World, except you can perform it at any point in time. Now, an important thing to these Silkbind moves, with the exception, I think, of Dash Breaker, I don't know if Dash Breaker you have to charge, but Silkbind, Spinning Bludgeon, and Impact Crater, you have to charge, and you can get max charge in different ways, because, for instance, now there's a new thing in Hammer, which is stances. In World, you used to charge your hammer and get that little white glow thing at the end of it, and then your hammer would just deal more damage and more KO and all of that stuff. Now you have two different stances, which is the strength stance, which is straight up deals more damage, and the other stance, which I guess is called normal stance. I forget if it actually has a proper name, but they're represented by a blue or yellow icon in your weapon gauge. And basically, depending on the stance that you're in, your moveset is going to vary slightly. You can watch my guide to figure out exactly which moveset does what. But an interesting thing is that if you swap from the strength stance into the yellow stance, you get max charge without actually having to charge your hammer. So that is something that you can do, say, for instance, right before you do an Impact Crater, which is, the damage of it is impacted by the level of charge that you have. You can just go, imagine you're in strength mode, you go from strength to regular mode, you have level 3 charge, and you pop the Impact Crater, boom, max charge level already and good to go. Same thing for Silkbind, Spinning Bludgeon. This is some tech that you'll have to learn, which is cool, because it has become a little bit more of a... It has more tech than it had in previous games, depending on which game we're talking about, because GU was also pretty weird. I think it also has a couple of iframes when you swap from the blue stance to the yellow stance. Let's keep that in mind. And then GU's Valor mode makes a bit of a comeback in this charge mode called Courage, which I personally really liked. I think it's fun. I talk about that in my guide. I think it's a fun way to play the weapon. It's a little bit different, and I feel like it's better for applying status ailments and maybe dealing elemental damage, even though, again, that's not the meta way to play. I'm just saying if you want to play it like that. I feel like charge mode courage is pretty fun. It also allows you to retain charge a little bit better, I think, but yeah. And then on top of it, there's even a counter strike to the hammer. So there's even an attack that you can do, which if you land it at the same time as a monster's landing an attack on you, I think it can go straight into a golf swing or something like that. But yeah, there's even a counter attack to the hammer. Like every weapon gets a counter in Monster Hunter Rise, which is pretty cool. But yeah, hammer, I still heavily recommend, even though I know that the tier list says that it's not the worst weapon, it is the second worst weapon. I would still heavily recommend hammer because it's just straight up fun. It's not the KO King. I don't think it's been the KO King for a while because the KO King is sticky ammunition. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But still, it's fun to play, very fun to play. Look at that, my video even shows up in recommended. But yeah, that's the hammer. Then you have the hunting horn. What can I tell you about the hunting horn? It's straight up a new weapon. Like seriously, if you've played hunting horn before, you're not going to know most of the stuff that goes into this hunting horn. Because, like, again, it's just straight up a completely new weapon, completely new moveset. Some of the moves might be somewhat familiar, but the way that performance works is actually very, very, very different. So there's two melody modes. I actually forget the names, but in the default mode, you play the same note twice. So you do an attack that plays a note, you do that twice, and that instantly plays the tune. So like you have, because every tune is basically two notes of something. So it's either your X attack, your A attack, or your X and A attack, and those are your notes. Perform is still used because it gives you that buff of moving faster and your attack's not bouncing, right? So you still have that, and you want to make sure that you keep that up as much as possible. There is, however, another melody mode where instead of you playing the same note twice, what you do is you play a note once and then you hit perform. But for that mode, you can play any tune that you want by just playing the note once and then hitting perform. So that is kind of how things work. And you can stack songs like that, right? You can stack, like, so you play note A, B, let's say X, and then A, and then X plus A, and then you perform, and it will play all three notes at once. And perform is also a much more offensive move, which is cool, and it doesn't last nearly as long as Monster Hunter World. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily like the way that Hunting Horn works in Rise. Personally, because I'm not a Hunting Horn main, because I never really played Hunting Horn that much, I actually like it. I like the new way that the Hunting Horn works, and I think it's really fun. But besides the performance changes, that's not all they did, because as you can see in the video even, there's a... Dude, what is going on in there? It's like freaking things are spinning and all the things are happening. It's freaking wild. What is happening is, for starters, there's a new thing called Magnificent Trio. So when you play all three notes, when you have all of your three buffs up, it's going to show a new icon on your weapon gauge that is going to let you perform a special attack, which is actually the one that they showed here. It is this one, where it kind of spins around. No, wait, that was perform. I think it... No, that was a slide beat. Come on. It's just... Yeah, here you go. This is the Magnificent Trio attack. You can barely understand what the hell is going on. It's pretty wild. It's this thing where he just like spins around, does all this crazy stuff. Boom, 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 boom. That's Magnificent Trio, right? And and then at the end, what he did there is something called the Infernal Melody. So you have this new thing, which is Magnificent Trio. And if you hit the monster enough, there's a new gauge that you start filling up. And as you fill up that gauge, it unlocks something called an Infernal Melody. I know it sounds complicated. It's not. The Hunting Horn is actually very intuitive if you watch my guide. But after you have that thing filled up, at the end of a Magnificent Trio, you can do this. And that gives you an additional buff on top of all the other buffs that you already have for your party. Magnificent Trio also refreshes all of your buffs, so keeping buffs up for your party has never been easier. And this weapon is basically just like a hammer that plays music in this game. It's pretty beast, but they nerfed it, because in the demo apparently it was too powerful, and they nerfed it a little bit, I'm guessing because of its support abilities, so that's why it scored a little bit lower. I don't remember what spot it was in. I think it was still above hammer, but it was significantly lower than it was in the demo, because in the demo it was just a complete powerhouse that would destroy everything while also buffing your party. Hunting horn, you mean the party hammer? Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So when it comes to silk mind attacks, it's got some really, really fun ones. Slide beat basically is one of those hyper armor attacks you can just charge into the monster. Really, really cool. Earth Shaker. Earth Shaker is one of my favorite animations in this game. You literally stab the monster in the face with your musical instrument, and that is going to jab like a spike into the monster, and then you pull out the weapon, and there's a wire attached to it, and then your character goes like, "Brow," like a friggin' face melt, like "Brow," and everything explodes. Monster takes a bunch of damage, lots and lots and lots of fun. And then there's this beat of resonance. I don't like it that much. It's got its uses. It basically replays your songs at a designated location. So you can put down a thing and then kind of acts as like a repeater for when you play songs. So if you do a song that is like, for instance, what's the thing called? The shockwave thing that you do with Hunting Horn. That thing does shockwaves as well. I don't think it's all that great. I know that it's probably got some niche uses that I'm not aware of. But yeah, Hunting Horn, really, really fun. Cannot recommend it enough. Even if you were a Hunting Horn main and you're looking at this and your eyes are going like, oh no man, this looks so flashy, try it out. I think it's a lot of fun. And yeah, it's just really, really cool weapon. That's the Hunting Horn. Then we got the Switch Axe. So this is one of the better Switch Axe iterations in my opinion. It is really, really cool. It's got Invincible Gambit, which is a really cool move that you can do where you have hyper armor. And when I was playing the demo, because for those of you guys who don't remember, I played the demo for like over 100 hours or something like that. When I was playing through the demo, I would actually get myself killed by I was spamming Invincible Gambit nonstop. This is so much fun. But no, it's like, it's actually really cool. It adds the thing where your gauge charges faster if you're using weapons that are not the traditional power file. It charges way faster, so you can do zero-sum discharges way faster. It's really cool. You got your Switch Charger, which is an ability that also charges your gauge. And you have the Soaring Wyvern Blade, which interestingly enough is the one that you have to pick between Invincible Gambit. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to use that. It sounds weird. But this also charges your gauge by a lot. So it makes it a really, really cool move, and it's very flashy, and it's a lot of fun. Personally, I think that the Switch Axe is one of the best weapons that we got this particular game, because they changed a couple of things in the moveset. They added some really cool moves to it, and it made the non-meta Switch Axes more important, which is always something that I find important in Monster Hunter, because a lot of times people are just like, no, power files, let's go. This is all I care about. And in this game, it actually gives you a reason to not use that. But I think it's really, really cool. Also, zero-sum discharge now has hyper armor, so monsters actually can't knock you out of them. They can kill you, though. They can just kill you if you zero-sum discharge at the wrong... But it's like, they're not going to knock you out. You know? But as usual, you can stop the zero-sum discharge earlier if you think you're about to die. There is that option. And there's also a different discharge, which is like the condensed discharge or whatever it's called, which is instead of you actually attaching the monster, it just does a faster one. So for monsters where it's dangerous to do zero-sum, you can use that with the added bonus that it'll launch all of your teammates into the air if they happen to be close to you, which is also a positive as far as I'm concerned. I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to launch people into the air. I'm like, screw them! Into the air you go! I don't care. But no, it's a really fun weapon. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Okay. Now then, the other one, Charge Blade. The community is a little bit upset over the fact that I said I was going to play Charge Blade just because a lot of people were complaining about it. I've seen quite a few comments of people that were upset over it. Because I said, you guys complaining all the time because your SAD's not as powerful as it was in Monster Hunter World. Because that's the thing that I see the most. The thing I see the most is people complaining about my SAD's not landing as much. And I get it. It's frustrating. Still, your weapon is at least not at the very bottom of the tier list. You know, it's not the worst weapon. And this is actually the weapon that I'm going to be playing on the PC version of Monster Hunter Rise because, you know, I want to keep things fresh. I already know how to play with the Gunlance. I've played the Gunlance extensively. I am playing the Gunlance extensively on the Switch. So I figured it'd be more interesting for you guys to watch me play the Charge Blade. So personally, I think the Charge Blade is actually a pretty interesting spot. However, it does have that thing where I'm not exactly sure how SAED is performing because I didn't play the Charge Blade nearly enough. Now, one of the skills that they're giving it is Morphing Advanced. This is the one that you can't change. I don't like this skill. I don't like it at all. I know that this is a good skill because I've seen it used by experienced players and they use it to really, really like good effect. This is basically a mobility skill that swaps you from sword mode into axe mode and at the same time moves you a lot in a given direction that you want, and it kind of just like preps you up to go into SAD if that's what you want to do, or to just do like one of those spinny things, one of the spinning axe attacks if you want to do that, which is cool. I think it's a cool move. I just don't really like the way that it works. I find it awkward to utilize. Then you have counter peak performance. This is like a really, really, really powerful counter that also supercharges your files. By supercharged files, like it charges up your files to maximum, even if you had no files. And the way that it works is it costs 1 wire bug. You put it down and it lasts about 3 seconds. If I remember correctly, I think me and Gaijin timed it. It lasts about 3 seconds. You can just like put it down and the attack that comes in the next 3 seconds, you block it. And then you can counter with SAD or with your elemental slash, which could be either the one with the sword or the one with the pizza cutter. Pizza cutter is back, which is pretty cool. It's called condensed spinning slash, if I remember correctly. And basically you have to choose. You have to choose between either charging your sword, like you used to do in World, where you would charge up the sword and then you would have like, you know, your attacks wouldn't bounce. You'd get additional file damage from either elements or power files, which would also do KO damage. The usual stuff, right? You have to choose between that or what was previously the Savage Axe Slash, which would make your blade spin. And basically doing that same move will cause the thing to start spinning. Now, the really cool thing about the spinning attacks is that you can keep the button pressed. So like when you hit a monster with it, if you keep the button pressed, it spins and it really like chainsaws through the monster, which is really satisfying, but has huge animation commitment. That's the thing that you got to be ready for. The pizza cutter has got a lot of animation commitment, you know? So there's that to it. Then there's the Axe Hopper. And personally, I think Axe Hopper is a lot of fun. You have to choose between Counter Peak Performance and Axe Hopper. I think Counter Peak Performance is the meta choice because you can just charge your files willy-nilly. It's not really a problem. But I've always played Axe Hopper because it's just a skill where your character jumps into the air and like, and then SAEDs into the monster. And I find that brutally satisfying, so I just do that instead. And that's probably going to be what I'm going to be doing on the PC version. You're going to be seeing me just like axe hopping all over the place. Because you guys know me. I play more for the style than I play for efficiency. And axe hopper is a really fun skill. Now again, do keep in mind, a majority of people that play Charge Blade are complaining about SAD hitboxes. I will test it further on the PC version because I did not play enough on Switch. I mostly focused on Gunlance. So there's that to it, and I'll let you guys know more about it. But I would not let the fact that a lot of people in the community are disappointed with the weapon stop me from playing it. That's my take on it, and I think it's a pretty decent weapon overall. Still, it's just I'm not a big fan of the Morphing Advance, but you know, we'll see. Oh yeah, also something that I didn't mention for Charge Blade and Switch Axe, because I told you guys earlier that you have a new upkeep skill in Longsword, which is the Quick Sheet skill. You also have a new maintenance skill for Switch Axe and Charge Blade, and that maintenance skill is Rapid Morph. So they actually slow down the morphing animations on both of these weapons, both for the Switch Axe and the Charge Blade. And because of that, it's going to feel clunky when you start playing them and you don't have that skill. Like Charge Blade in particular, I remember felt very clunky. It's almost like I remember that I used to play Charge Blade with focus on Monster Hunter World, and whenever I would not have focus, it would feel weird. Was it focus or was there another skill? I think it was focus. And in here, Your charge blade and switch axe are going to feel weird unless you have at least some amount of rapid morph. So if you start playing these weapons and it feels weird to you, put rapid morph in there, at least a couple of points, and test it out and see if it feels better. Another advice that I would have for these weapons is level 1 evade extender can't go wrong on any of these weapons. Level 2 even better. In my case, when charge blade started feeling really good, because I for some reason when I started playing Rise, I also struggled with charge blade, but it was like it started feeling really good when I went rapid morph 3, evade extender 3. I was like, oh, I'm in heaven, baby. Look at this bad boy go. But that's probably not the most optimal way to play it, so I would recommend like at least 1 point of evade extender and a couple of points into rapid morph for charge blade. I would definitely recommend that. So try that out if the weapon feels weird for you. And yeah, just keep that stuff in mind. Then we have the insect glaive. Now, insect glaive is again one of the weapons that I didn't play that much. One of the first things that I would point out when it comes to it, though, is new kinsects. There's new kinsect types. Kinsects actually, there's some dual dust kinsects, which can drop like poison and paralysis, or poison and healing, or paralysis and healing, and there's a bunch of different dusts like that. There's also still blast dust if that's something that you want, but you know, there's different types of kinsects. On top of it, not just because the dusts, but because the kinsects themselves. There are some kinsects that will actually follow with your attack. So like you'll be doing a combo and the kinsect will join you in the attack, which is cool. I really, really like that. And there's other different types of kinsects. I would very heavily recommend watch my guide video for that, because I go much more in depth about the different types of kinsects, what each of them does, what their specialty is, and all of that. So you can watch that video. The video has timestamps. I know it's I know for some people it's going to be like daunting to look at the video. It's probably going to be like 50 minutes long or some ridiculousness like that. But it's got timestamps and you can go to the kinsect part if that's all you want to watch. Now, in terms of special attacks, I'm not a big fan of Silkbind Vault. I think it's all right. I know that I've gone back and forth in this skill. It resets your aerial time, but at the end of the day, even though they buffed aerial a little bit, it's still not the best thing ever. I actually don't know what the most optimal combo is at this point, because there's been some changes there. But either way, the Silkbind Vault is not my favorite skill. Sure, it resets your aerial time if that is something that you want to do. If you're someone that plays a lot of aerial. Insect Glaive, that is going to come in handy for sure. It allows you to reposition, do all these crazy things. Now, this is the very poorly named skill Recall Kinsect, okay? You should think of this more like evade backwards flip or something like that, because that's what your character does. He does an evade flip. It's got invincibility frames. It's actually really good. A lot of people sleep on this skill. I think this skill is really good if you're fighting a monster that is giving you problems and you're having trouble, even with the ridiculous mobility of the insect glaive. If you're having trouble fighting a monster because it keeps charging at you or doing stuff, Recall Kinsect is a really good skill to have, because you jump backwards, your Kinsect comes back, gives you health if it hits the monster when you do it. It's really, really cool. So yeah, there's that. But obviously, the downside is if you get Recall Kinsect, you can get Diving Wyvern, which is the plunging attack that you had in Monster Hunter World. So I have to pick between these two, which is sad. I would rather get rid of Silkbind Vault, give me Recall Kinsect and Diving Wyvern, and I would be a much happy user of Insect Glaive. That's the way that I personally look at it, but you know, to each their own. The moveset itself has not changed drastically from Monster Hunter World. They introduced some stuff that changes the moveset a little bit through switch skills, and basically my interpretation of it, what I can remember from when I was playing it for the guide, was that a couple of moves are going to be better because they have more hits, so they're going to be better if you're using like elemental damage, status ailments, that type of stuff. And other moves are going to be better if you're using raw damage, because you get the traditional less hits, but meteor hits. So that's kind of like the two choices that you get. There's also a hit that instantly sends you into the air, which you don't really need, but you can get that if you want to. It's a fun weapon all around. Don't really have a whole lot to say, because like I said, it's one of the weapons that has changed the least when it comes to Monster Hunter World, even though a lot of people were saying that they don't like the way Diving Wyvern feels when compared to World, so I don't know about that. Didn't feel that much different to me, but I'm not an Insect Glaive player, so whatever. But I think overall, pretty good weapon. And then you have the weapons that I can't really say much about, which are the ranged weapons. So we're going to start off with Bowgun. So the cool thing about light Bowgun is that you can you have a lot of mobility. Most of the speedruns that you'll see and most of the gameplay that you'll see is going to be featuring stuff like either the new piercing elemental rounds, which is like a new type of ammunition that was added in Monster Hunter Rise. I don't remember that being a thing before. And by the way, I say piercing. Piercing would be like one of the last ones that you'd see, because most of the time you're going to be seeing stickies and you're going to be seeing slicing. And that is the stuff that I personally tend to see more when it comes to videos of light bowguns and stuff like that. It does a ton of damage, and it has a ton of mobility. I actually really like it. The thing is, I don't play it because I don't like the managing aspect of the ammunition. I know people tell me, oh, Rakan, it's so simple. I know it's simple. It's just I still don't like it. It's a hassle to me, so whatever. Silkbind Glide is something that you could charge to a monster and do a blast. I don't think you actually use this that much. It's usually more efficient to just like shoot stuff at it. So even though you can use this most of the time, I don't really see that being used all that much. Then you have Fanning Vault. Now the cool thing about Fanning Vault is that you'll actually jump above the monster, and then you can shoot mines at it, and then every time that you shoot the monster, the mines will explode. Again, not really something that you tend to see in high-end gameplay a whole lot, but it is fun. What you do see in high-end gameplay a lot is Fanning Maneuver, because basically you just kind of like reposition yourself to shoot, and it temporarily speeds up your attack power, and you can shoot while you are doing it. So this is obviously the more meta choice as opposed to Fanning Vault. But overall, it's like if I had to say something, it's just like the thing about the light bowgun, it's got really good mobility when compared to the other bowgun, which is the heavy bowgun. Now, the heavy bowgun actually has an interesting thing that they've added, which is you can charge your shots, which as far as I'm aware, this is the first time that you can do that. You can actually charge shots in this weapon, like a greatsword or a hammer, and I think that's pretty cool. But from what I've seen, people only really use it scarcely. Most of the time, they still do the regular shots. When it comes to this stuff, I'd recommend you check out like Angbata, because he's like the bowgun guy. I don't really, at least that I know of, I don't really cover bowguns all that much, so to me, it's whatever. Now, with this one, you also have Free Silkbind Glide. Is this the one? Yeah, this is the one that was a little bit weird when I used it, but I haven't really used this skill since, because I don't play heavy bowgun at all. There's a counter shot. Counter shot, I really liked it. I haven't really seen it used that much either. And then there's the counter charger, which, what does this one even do? Shortens the amount of time needed for a charged shot. Okay, there you go. I don't know. I don't play heavy bowgun. I hear the heavy bowgun's good. I hear that's got real. I mean, it's the second best weapon in the game. It's probably going to be really good. Usually what I see people do is they put stickies on it. They put slicing on it. Earlier this morning, I saw a speedrun where someone just landed, I basically just landed a 700 damage wyvern fire. And, you know, my balls shrunk to the size of peas because, you know, I'm a Gunlance user. And, you know, I just felt very emasculated when I saw the heavy bowgun deal 700 damage with something that used to be an exclusive move to my weapon. And my wyvern fire, by comparison, deals like 300 damage. So I'm just like looking at that and I'm like, oh, must be nice. And no, before you ask, the monster was not sleeping. The monster was awake. And he blasted that motherfucker in the face with 700 damage. That was very frustrating. Didn't like that at all. But yeah, really powerful weapon. If you're going to be someone that mains bowgun, you probably already know that you're going to be playing either the heavy or the light one. Then finally you have the bow, which is the most powerful weapon in the game currently. And according to some of the research that I did like a couple of months ago, the reason why the bow is the most powerful weapon in the game currently is because you can cancel certain animations that allow you to deal more damage than you're supposed to. Apparently, that's what the experts tell me. I don't know. I don't play this weapon all that much, but if you want to play bow, then you know. If you want me to tell you what's the difference between light bowguns, heavy bowguns, and bow, the bow does... you're supposed to deal your damage a little bit closer to the monster for the most part, and you do it with much more style because you're just like, oh, I'm going to slide over here and charge my thing, slide over there. And even though you have something which is the, what's it called? The Dragon Piercer. Even though you have something that's really stylish called Dragon Piercer, you're rarely ever going to use it because, at least I think you rarely use it in this one. So, yeah. The good thing about bow, by the way, is that you actually get different shot types this time around. So there's piercing, spread. I don't know if there's like a normal type or something like that, but you do get different shot types. There's also a couple of bows that come with like buffs that you can do to people. You can heal people. You can increase their damage. You also have your Herculean draw. This is kind of like power sheath in the greatsword. Differences doesn't actually sheath your weapon. So basically you do like a dodge thing and your bow deals more damage for a certain amount of time. So this is like an upkeep buff that you have to keep up. Then there's Focus Shot, which you shoot and dodge, and it recovers your stamina to full. And then there's Aerial Aim, which I'm told is good. Kegrin likes this a whole lot, but I don't actually know in the meta side of things how powerful it is. But yeah, most people, they swear by the bow. Bow's like real powerful because you do the animation canceling thingamabob. And I'm sorry about my description of ranged weapons, but quite simply, they're not fun for me, so I don't play them. I don't force myself to play things that I don't find fun. So that's what I can tell you about those, and then I can reference you to Angbata. Go watch Angbata if you're curious about which weapon you should be playing in Monster Hunter Rise when the PC version comes out. Hopefully this little video here, I say little, God knows how long this is at this point. Hopefully this helps you out and make your decision as to what weapon you'll be playing when the PC version comes out. Like I said, I'm going to be playing some Charge Blade. I'm going to be streaming the thing here on the channel. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy it, the dislike button doesn't matter because YouTube doesn't give a fuck about what you think or I think, and they basically hid the dislike button forever. So it is what it is. But I hope you enjoyed it anyways, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.